Hi, welcome to Cybersecure channel. In today's video, we will cover role-based access control, which is a method of regulating access to a computer or network resource based on the roles of the individual users within an organization. Role-based access control in Kubernetes drive authorization decision by regulating access based on the roles defined through dynamically configured policies via Kubernetes API. Permissions are configured through role, which is applied to a particular namespace, or cluster role, which is a non-namespace resource used when cluster-wide role is needed to be defined. Role or cluster role contain rules that represent a set of permissions. These set of permissions are purely additive, and there is no deny rule. Binding grants the permission defined in a role to a user or a set of users. Role binding is used for permission within a particular namespace, and cluster role binding is a cluster-wide permission association. It is important to note that role binding can also reference a cluster role to grant the permission defined in that cluster role to resource inside the role binding namespace. This kind of reference lets you define a set of common roles across your cluster and then reuse them within a multiple namespace. Role-based access authorization uses the RBAC.authorization.k8.io API group to drive authorization decisions, allowing you to dynamically configure policies through Kubernetes API. Role-based access control API declare 4 kinds of Kubernetes object, which includes role, cluster role, role binding, and cluster role binding. Role is applied on particular namespace. Here, default namespace is being defined. Resources are represented and accessed using a string representation of their object name. Here we define the secret resource, and verbs are the action which can be performed on that particular resource, such as we can get and watch and list that particular resource. Imperative command to implement roles is also shown on the screen. When defining roles, always use imperative command for saving time. While defining role binding particular user, here gen and role, which is secret reader, are associated to each other. The imperative command for defining role binding is also shown on the screen. Now moving towards the demo, where we will define role and role bindings and check whether configuration are applied correctly. Then we will also associate an already defined cluster role to role binding in particular namespace. Now first defining a role named Smokey and defining resources that are pods, deployment, and stateful sets, and then defining the verbs. And we also declare the namespace as well. Now we will associate the particular role to the user Smoke through role binding. We are using imperative command to perform these activities. This can also be done through a YAML file through declarative command. Now checking our configuration, whether we can access the resource as it is namespace bound resource in particular namespace, this can only be accessible through the particular namespace. When we define the namespace, we are now able to access the pods. As we can see, we have now used the namespace, and now we can access the particular resource. Now in the second example, we will associate an already defined cluster role to the user through role binding and check the configuration. We have defined the role binding view cluster, and we will use the already defined cluster role to the user Smoke. Now we will use the namespaces. We are applying the configuration on the namespace default, applications, and kube not release. Sorry, kube not lease, kube public, now checking whether the configuration is correct or not. Yes, in the default namespace we can list the pods. Now checking the second namespace, that is kube public, and we can access the pods as well. Now on the kube system, we didn't define the particular role binding, so we were not able to list the pod in the kube system namespace. So in this video, we implemented authorization through role-based access control. I hope you find this video useful. Please subscribe to remain updated with upcoming videos, and thank you for watching the video.